how were these kingdoms administered? As in the case of earlier kings, land revenue remained important for these rulers, and the village remained the basic unit of administration. There were some new developments as well. Kings adopted a number of steps to win the support of men who were powerful, either economically or socially, or because of their political and military strength. For instance, some important administrative posts were now hereditary. This means that sons succeeded fathers to these posts. For example, the poet Ch-10 was a Mahadandanayak, or chief judicial officer, like his father. Sometimes one person held many offices. For instance, besides being a Mahadandanayak, Ch-10 was a Kumar Amatya. Meaning an important minister, and a Sandhi Vigrahik, meaning a minister of war and peace. Besides, important men probably had a say in local administration. These included the Nagar Shreshthi, or chief banker or merchant of the city. The Sarthvaha, or leader of the merchant caravans. The Pratham Kulika, or the chief craftsman, and the head of the Kayasthas, or scribes. These policies were reasonably effective, but sooner or later, some of these powerful men grew strong enough to set up independent kingdoms. What do you think may have been the advantages and disadvantages of having hereditary officers? Page number 109. A new kind of army. Like earlier rulers, some of these kings maintained a well-organized army with elephants, chariots, cavalry, and foot soldiers. Besides, there were military leaders who provided the king with troops whenever he needed them. They were not paid regular salaries. Instead, some of them received grants of land. They collected revenue from the land and used this to maintain soldiers and horses and provide equipment for warfare. These men were known as Samants. Whenever the ruler was weak, Samants tried to become independent. Assemblies in the southern kingdoms. The inscriptions of the Pallavas mention a number of local assemblies. These included the Sabha, which was an assembly of Brahmin land owners. This assembly functioned through subcommittees which looked after irrigation, agricultural operations, making roads, local temples, etc. The Ur was a village assembly found in areas where the landowners were not Brahmins. And the Nagaram was an organization of merchants. It is likely that these assemblies were controlled by rich and powerful landowners and merchants. Many of these local assemblies continued to function for centuries. Ordinary people in the kingdoms. We can catch an occasional glimpse of the lives of ordinary people from plays and other accounts. Let us look at some of these. Kalidas is known for his plays depicting life in the king's court. An interesting feature about these plays is that the king and most Brahmins are shown as speaking Sanskrit, while women and men other than the king and Brahmins use Prakrit. His most famous play, Abhigyan Shakuntalam, is the story of the love between a king named Dushyant and a young woman named Shakuntala. We find an interesting description of the plight of a poor fisherman in this play. A fisherman finds a ring. A fisherman found a precious ring which the king had given to Shakuntala. But which had been accidentally swallowed by a fish. When he went to the palace with it, the gatemen accused him of theft, and the chief police officer was rather rude. However, the king was happy when he saw the ring and sent a reward for the fisherman. Then the police officer and the gateman decided to take a share of the reward and went along with the fisherman to have a drink. Do you think that if a poor man finds something and reports this to the police, he would be treated like this today? Name a famous man who taught in Prakrit and a king who issued inscriptions in Prakrit. Hint: see chapter 6 and 7. Page number 111. The Chinese pilgrim, Fa Xian, noticed the plight of those who were treated as untouchables by the high and mighty. They were expected to live on the outskirts of the city. He writes, if such a man enters a town or a marketplace, he strikes a piece of wood in order to keep himself separate. People hearing this sound know what it means and avoid touching him or brushing against him. And Ban Bhatt provides us with a vivid picture of the king's army on the move. The king's army. The king travelled with an enormous amount of equipment. Apart from weapons, there were things of daily use such as pots, pans, furniture, golden footstools, food, including animals such as goat, deer, rabbits, vegetables, spices, carried on carts or loaded onto pack animals such as camels and elephants. This huge army was accompanied by musicians beating drums and others playing horns and trumpets. Villagers had to provide hospitality along the way. They came with gifts of curds, gur, and flowers, and provided fodder for the animals. They also tried to meet the king and place their complaints and petitions before him. The army left a trail of destruction behind. Elephants often trampled down the huts of villagers. And the oxen yoked to the caravans of merchants ran away, scared by the tumult. As Barn Bhatt says, the whole world was swallowed up in dust. Make a list of all the things that were carried with the army. What did the villagers bring for the king? Page number 112. Elsewhere. Find Arabia on map 6, pages 76-77. Although it's a desert, it was at the hub of communications for centuries. In fact, Arab merchants and sailors played an important role in the sea trade between India and Europe. See page 92. Others who lived in Arabia were the Bedouins, pastoral tribes depending mainly on camels, hardy animals that could survive in the desert. Around 1,400 years ago, Prophet Muhammad introduced a new religion, Islam, in Arabia. Like Christianity, Islam was a religion that laid stress on the equality and unity of all before Allah, the one supreme God. Here is a verse from the Quran, the sacred book of Islam. For Muslim men and women, for believing men and women, for devout men and women, for true men and women, for men and women who are patient and constant, for men and women who humble themselves, for men and women who give in charity, for men and women who fast, for men and women who guard their chastity, and for men and women who engage much in Allah's remembrance. For them has Allah prepared forgiveness and great reward. Within 100 years, Islam spread to North Africa, Spain, Iran, and India. Arab sailors who were already familiar with the coastal settlements of the subcontinent now brought the new religion with them. Arab soldiers conquered Sindh, in the present-day Pakistan, about 1,300 years ago. Trace the routes that would have been taken by these sailors and soldiers on map 6. Imagine Harshvardhan's army will visit your village next week. Your parents are preparing for the visit. Describe what they say and do. Let's recall. 1. State whether true or false. A. Harishen composed a prashasti in praise of Gautamiputra Shri Satkarni. B. The rulers of Aryavart brought tribute for Samudragupta. C. There were 12 rulers in Dakshin Path. D. Takshashila and Madurai were important centers under the control of the Gupta rulers. E. Aihole was the capital of the Pallavas. F. Local assemblies functioned for several centuries in South India. 2. Mention 3 authors who wrote about Harshvardhan. 3. What changes do you find in the army at this time? 4. What were the new administrative arrangements during this period? Let's discuss. 5. What do you think Arvind would have to do if he was acting as Samudragupta? 6. Do you think ordinary people would have read and understood the prashastis? Give reasons for your answer. Let's do. 7. If you had to make a genealogy for yourself, who are the people you would include in it? How many generations would you like to show? Make a chart and fill it. 8. How do you think wars affect the lives of ordinary people today? Keywords: Prashasti, Aryavart, Dakshin Path, genealogy, hereditary officer, Samant, assembly, Nagaram. Some important dates. Beginning of the Gupta dynasty, about 1,700 years ago. The rule of Harshvardhan, about 1,400 years ago.